we're gonna really deep dive and go into a lot of good things that have a lot to do with thyroid, weight loss, insomnia, things that maybe you've been contending with. And just what I'd like to find out first is, who in here knows they have low thyroid? Oh, okay, quite a few. And of those, how many of you have known that for over, say, 20 years? 20 years, and how about 25? Wow, I just want to, I want to give you a gift. This is my Amazon bestseller. It's called Thyroid and Menopause Madness. It goes into basic function medical premises. How many of you know you have Hashimotos, autoimmune thyroid? Okay, and anybody have known that for over, say, 15 or 20 years? Okay. There's 23 million people that have autoimmune Hashimoto's hypothyroid, and many of them don't even know it because in the medical model, they don't test for it, whether you have what I call plain vanilla low thyroid or Hashimoto's. It's treated the same way with thyroid medicine. And that can be great if you just have plain vanilla low thyroid. But we're going to talk today about some of the other conditions that contribute and they modulate your thyroid. So one of the myths is, you know, I just need to find the right dosage and the right brand and I'll be fine. But in reality, there's over 22 different biochemical pathways that modulate your thyroid, and we're going to talk about the top 6. And what we hear a lot of is these are, well, we're going to start with, Thelma Thyroid's going to help us here, and there's a handout that goes along with this in your file. And if you just want to follow along here, she's going to help us with some of the things that you might be contending with, or you might not. But foggy brain is a huge part of this condition. And I like this word, finished. Finished denotes it's a new season in my life. I'm finished with the old season. I'm tired of the mediocrity. I don't feel good, and yet I'm being told that my labs are normal, that type of thing. So the F in finish stands for foggy brain. Where did I put the keys? What's that person's name that I've known for 10 years? You know, that type of thing. And that's not age related. This is a new thing. I have a client, she's 28 years old. She told me that she pulled the stroller out of the back of the SUV, went down 2 football fields, realizing she was pushing an empty stroller and the baby was by herself back in the SUV. So 28 years old. So it's not age related. And she was terrified. You know, it's like, where's my mind? And I don't have a lot on my mind, so what's this about, you know? Another biggie is inability to lose weight, even on a low-calorie diet. And we're going to talk about a big secret about the ability to lose weight. It's not that we can't lose weight or we've got to find that perfect diet. There's a lot of good diets. I don't believe in diets. And we're going to talk about what can I do if I'm on a decent, great way of eating that's sustainable? Not cutting calories, not measuring food, none of that, you know. The next big thing is no libido. This goes beyond even sexuality. It's like, well, maybe I'm just not that interested, but even no enthusiasm for the things that maybe you used to enjoy. Like, I used to like to go to the movies, I like to go shopping, whatever. It's like, well, whatever. You know, just kind of a ho-hum feeling about that. The next one is the I in finished is insomnia. Insomnia is rampant in our country. Can't get to sleep, can't stay asleep, or the opposite. Oh my gosh, I sleep 10 hours, I still wake up tired. So insomnia is another big symptom that we hear a lot about. Stomach issues. Stomach issues are really a big deal. This is where the rubber meets the road because this is where your immune system starts. The I mean, the things like constipation, diarrhea, SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, these things need to be identified so that we can clear the gut up, the microbiome of the digestive tract, so that you feel more like the best version of you, which now these are things that modulate your thyroid, not just the dosage. H stands for hair loss and heart palpitations. I wanted H to stand for two things. So hair loss, it used to be that, we'd have this lack of eyebrows on the outside, latter part of the eyebrows, but also male pattern baldness and hair loss, and that's been an issue, especially even more so post-COVID. A lot of COVID clients said, I had Hashimoto's, I had low thyroid, but after COVID, it became even a bigger deal. This is the number one symptom that we hear about, which is just fatigue, exhausted, just all the time feeling, like one client said, I just feel like I'm walking through mud all the time. And yet I'm taking my thyroid medication, I feel good, I'm exercising, and, so fatigue can depend on a few things that we're going to talk about. D stands for dry hair, dry eyes, dry skin, dry everything, dry down there, dry everywhere. So that's been an issue. And it's like, why all of a sudden, I haven't changed much, and yet that seems to be an issue. I want to talk about what basic biochemistry of the top. We're not going to dive deep, but just so I want to empower you so you can talk to any healthcare professional about some of the things that may be going on with you. And normally in the medical model, they will test TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, and T4. And T4 is produced mostly out of your thyroid at the base of your neck, and a little bit of T3, and as you probably know, T4 means 4 parts iodine. And we need iodine, excuse me, I'm just going to come over on this side. And then T4 is, when you see these two numbers on your lab work, what they're testing is your pituitary gland. Is that signaling down to T4 to make 4 parts iodine? Well, this taxi driver, this neurological signaling, gets thwarted if you have Hashimoto's. And Hashimoto's is an autoimmune. Dr. Hashimoto in 1944 won a Nobel laureate for discovering this autoimmune. And so he, it's a real autoimmune. I say that because some people say, well, Hashimoto's, no. But it's a real autoimmune, and when that signaling gets distorted, T4 doesn't get the signal from TSH. So that's why you can take a lot of thyroid medication and it doesn't seem to be working. It's just, unbeknownst to you, one of the reasons is you have Hashimoto's, which is autoimmune against your whole system, not just your thyroid. These are the main glands and organs right here that are impacted by Hashimoto's or thyroid. There's another taxi driver from T4 to the liver, and it's called a TGB antibody. And we need both to really get to the root cause of this Hashimoto's. So one's called a TPO antibody, the other's called a TGB. And the literature says if one is negative, 82% of the time the other one's positive. So it's not enough just to test the TPO antibody. Kind of makes sense? So the taxi driver down to the liver. Now, when we're perimenopausal, the liver makes sex hormones. It takes over for progesterone, estrogen, and testosterone. If you're at that season in your life, maybe you've been told you have this thing called fatty liver. Fatty liver has nothing to do with one's weight. There's a little duct between the liver and the gallbladder, and that duct can get backed up. And with good fats like salmon, avocados, So there's where the term fatty liver comes from. But if the liver has this, they call it non-alcoholic fatty liver, and that can congest the liver, and so one doesn't make as much progesterone, estrogen, and testosterone. So now progesterone helps you sleep. That can be an issue with this insomnia. Estrogen, we don't want to be in estrogen dominance. It's carcinogenic. Think of a pregnant woman who's supposed to be in estrogen dominance, and she's fuller hipped, fuller busted. But if we're trying to lose weight and the body thinks there's too much estrogen, then we have some issues there. So, and then as women, we still need somewhat some testosterone, and energy depletes if we don't have that. So then our next stop here is our digestive tract, or our gut. This is a biggie because this is where our immune system starts. This is where the process of T4 drops in iodine and becomes T3. And you have T3 receptor sites from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet that help you feel cognitive, optimistic, just no brain fog. It's just, they dance these in the gut we make neurotransmitters. You know, for years I thought that the neurotransmitters like serotonin, the feel-good, happy hormone, dopamine, which gives you energy, GABA, which helps you sleep, these were all in the brain, but in reality, the majority of them are produced in the gut, and they're transferred up. This is really important. Up to the emotional limbic side of the brain, right next door to where TSH is being produced in the pituitary gland. So we have a saying in functional health, which is what you and I are talking about, that if we clear up the gut, the brain clears up. So the mood swings aren't as aggressive, and there's the gut starts producing serotonin, dopamine, GABA, serotonin, those things. And we can test now. We don't have to speculate about it. Just from the privacy of your own home, saliva tests where we can find out on a circadian rhythm how your neurotransmitters, back in the day we couldn't even test for serotonin, dopamine, GABA, acetylcholine. Neurotransmitters can be being produced in your gut, but if they're trying to transfer up to the brain and there's inflammation going on, that pathway is being thwarted. So there we've got another little conundrum that we can now test. We don't have to speculate about it. In the main medical model, it's like, well, you have a leaky gas tank, let's just put more gas in it. Whereas in reality, we want to find out where's the leak and fix it and then put more gas in, you know. But, okay, and then the last big gland or organ that is really compromised with thyroid issues are the adrenal glands. And as you may know, the adrenals, they're the fight or flight. And sometimes it's not that you don't need more thyroid medication, it's that the adrenals need to be supported. The adrenals have three main jobs. It's to, so you have an appropriate response to stress, and that you wait, and the sleep-wake cycle. And your adrenals sit up on top of your kidneys, and they're like little walnuts that sit up there, and they also have a neurological pathway up to the doggone pituitary that's trying to produce the TSH. So we can be in what we call adrenal fatigue. Here again, we can test for it. We don't need to speculate about it. And find out, oh, everything's normal until nighttime when it shoots up. You know, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, everything's fine. And then through saliva tests, you know, we can find out that the cortisol, norepinephrine, epinephrine are the three main things out of the adrenal glands. And it's funny because you might think you're not stressed, or maybe you came off of a big season of being stressed, but the body sometimes will shut down after the stress is over. You've heard the story of mom lifting the car off the baby. She has that strength, and as soon as the stressor is over, you know, she falls apart. So how many of you feel like you're under stress? Okay, all right. More so than in years gone by? Okay, yeah, we have a little more on our mind these days, you know. So why is this happening? I like this word flames because the biggest thing is inflammation. And I touched on it before, but oh boy, studies are saying inflammation is the reason, you know, from colds to submitting to COVID to cancer, that inflammation is really an issue. We can now test inflammation. One of the biggest markers is C-reactive protein, and fibrogen, homocysteine. These are markers that would tell us, A, do you have inflammation? And B, if so, where is it? And C, what do we do about it, you know, to get that inflammation down? There's a lot of science-based herbs, supplements that will reduce that without, you know, the first thing is to find out where is it. Is it due to leaky gut? Because if you're doing everything right, taking your medication, but the gut is leaking, then the body, thinking it's serving you, starts bombarding these particles, these good gluten-free, dairy-free, low-sugar particles, and the inflammation keeps going. And it's like, boy, I've been on a diet and I've been doing everything right, and yet I haven't dropped an ounce. And if you've ever been there, I've been there, I feel your pain. I went with girlfriends to the gym, they all lost 10 pounds, I lost 2, and I'd been diligent, you know, and it's just, I didn't know I had some low-grade infections going on, which we can now find out in the gut, and because I didn't remember being sick and things of that nature. So knowing if you have inflammation going on is the big aha, the big secret behind weight loss. On our website at thyroidsisters.com, I have purposely not glammed up about 75 or 80 videos of different people one gal, everybody's name is on there, but one gal, Lori Perry, she lost 99 pounds in 9 months. And she says she worked for the Treasury Department, and in the height of COVID, she goes, I didn't even have time to walk the dog. You know, we got the inflammation down. That's the secret. That's the kicker. How we eat, things that we can control in our environment, that really helps. Another one, her name was April Edwards, and she's a big human resource person in Qualcomm. She hires over 30,000 people normally. And she was so tired, she'd go into the back of her car, set her phone alarm, and wake up an hour later, and then she would be walking back to the building and see all her colleagues. And she did a testimony, and she was doing, it was 6 months later, she lost 10 pounds, but the point is we got the inflammation down. In her case, we found out she had Hashimotos, and that can be a real aha, because we all know how to diet. What we need to know is how to eat and exercise appropriately, and I'm really going to hit that in a minute, because we have this great place to exercise, you know. But anyway, so then I touched on this as well. Leaky gut, if you were not breastfed, the study says you have something like, it was 86% probability, because you didn't get mother's milk, colostrum, which is loaded with enzymes to build your digestive tract right from the beginning. So leaky gut can be a real issue. We have several ways of restoring that leaky gut. They did studies on adopted adults, and most of them had leaky gut because most of them were not breastfed. If you've had trauma to your head, particularly head and neck, like sports or, you know, that can contribute to multiple autoimmunes. Not being born vaginally, oddly enough, because as the baby fights down the the birth canal, that develops neurological patterns. So that can have an impact on leaky gut. So because that's where the neurotransmitters, some of them are produced, you know. So with leaky gut, we have a lot of, we have ways of rebuilding that, but no sense doing that till we get to the culprit. And we know the blood work can tell us. I created a panel that answers all of these. I have a national contract with LabCorp. So we can find out, you know, were you ever exposed to C. diff? Do you have H. pylori? Do you, you know, SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth? There's a breath test. So if you found yourself doing a lot of leaky gut restoration programs and things don't seem to be coming along, it would be good to have some tests done. The gold standard in the world is something called GI MAP, M-A-P-P, and they're a fecal test, and people from all over the world send their specimens into they overnight them to this lab. And they're more diagnostic than, say, LabCorp when it comes to fecal testing, because they go into something like 230 different protozoas and worms and liver flukes. And so if you're, you know, play around on their website, they have over 30 panels, but it's really interesting to have that resource, because I had a client, a male who was full grown, he was in his mid-50s. He was 5'11". When I met him, he was 120 pounds. Had gut issues for years, fecal tests, couldn't figure it out. We sent a specimen in to GI MAP, and we found out he had some bizarre thing. To this day, we don't know how he got it. He doesn't remember ever being sick. He grew up in this country, you know. So anyway, this lab will also tell us what nutraceuticals and what pharmaceuticals will work on the specimen. It takes about 3 weeks to get the answers back, but when we do, then we're not wasting time on, well, will tetracycline help this? And he chose to do the antibiotics, which is great, for 10 days or so. Then we rebuilt his digestive tract, and to this day, now he weighs 175, and he just didn't know. Autoimmune is another, unbeknownst to you, perhaps you have an autoimmune. It seems to be so rapid in this country, and back in the day, we'd have to send you out, oh, do you have rheumatoid arthritis? Do you have MS? Do you have lupus? Do you have Hashimotos? On this blood work, we can test for Hashimotos, but then if we want to dig deeper, now there's one test by a lab called Cyrix Labs. They're the gold standard in the world, C-Y-R-E-X, and Cyrix will identify with a 10-year predictability factor, which is pretty jaw-dropping, that, you know, this is brewing. But to know that is so helpful, because then we can apply science-based protocols to that. And so Cyrix is another lab. They have a cross-reactivity food sensitivity test. How many of you know you're gluten sensitive? Okay. Yeah, well, they not only test gluten, but they test dairy. It's so diagnostic that it'll come back and say, almonds offend your digestive tract, but cashews don't. Or salmon's good, but sea bass isn't. So that's how, you know, then we can really go, boy, this is, you have this or full blown. You don't need all these tests. I just want you to know that, you know, in functional medicine, we don't leave any stone unturned. We want to see progress, you know, every 5 weeks or so, not perfection, but where things are moving ahead. The next biggie is anemia. Not only an iron anemia, but B12 folic acid anemia. Anemia is, maybe you've heard the buzz on the internet, or maybe you've been tested for MTHFR. It's a gene anomaly that tells us that your Krebs cycle is not making B12 or folic acid, which gives you energy and cognitive thinking. And so that's, we look for anemia. And this is really interesting as far as hair falling out, because you can have total iron, which is great, but if the storage of iron, ferritin, is low, that can contribute to hair loss. And so I like to run about 5 markers around anemia. And so that sheds light on B12 folic acid anemia as well as iron anemia and goes to the hair falling out. We have environmental issues, especially these days, and I want to touch on this because we can't live in a bubble, and we want to socialize, and we want to make things our priority, you know, life and friends, and we do the best we can, right? And as far as controlling our environment by getting enough sleep, by getting to our Pilates class, by just, you know, the air that we breathe and controlling our thoughts, thinking about what we're thinking about. Because if we go negative on ourselves, that's even worse. In fact, they've got new scans now where if you are having negative thoughts about yourself, they call it self-loathing in the studies, which is a term that I didn't like. I have Hashimotos, and I was like, I don't self-loathe, but it means, which is an autoimmune, Hashimotos, and you've really got to think about what you're thinking about and stop beating yourself up if you are, you know, when you're in Twinkie zone, like in the car when you're alone or about ready to fall asleep, shoulda, woulda, coulda, you know. So genetics, they say genetics loads the gun, but environment pulls the trigger. And we can't help the genes that we were born with, but we sure can manage, say, autoimmune, thyroid, or any autoimmune, or just plain hypothyroid, and still live big. We're not a slave to our genetics. We can do workarounds. It's something we might have to manage the rest of our lives, but that's okay. What are some steps we could do? First of all, stop beating yourself up. You haven't done anything wrong. Usually in the traditional medical system, we can't get all the blood markers that we need. So, and I'd like you to start thinking about losing a spirit of hesitancy and delay. There's kind of this, I mean, get data and bring thoughts together as to what's best if you're trying to make a decision on anything. But then go ahead and implement. You know, lose that spirit of always hesitating so much that, oh boy, the opportunity went by, say, for example. But, and just really start treating you like the valuable person that you are. I'd like you to remember, you know, some of the hopes and dreams and goals that you had maybe before when you were feeling better. And start gathering as much information as you can and really enjoying the process of, like, for example, connecting with Estella and her great team and finding out, you know, how can this amazing place really change your life and make big transitions in your life. So we want to test and not guess, which is the next thing. I touched on some of these various tests that we can do now. They're all, well, there's a panel that you go to LabCorp for that I have a national contract with. But these are like, this test is from doctor's data, if any of you want to Google that. It's one day you just spit in these vials morning, noon, and night, and you send it off to the lab, and we get this amazing results about neurotransmitters, your cortisol levels, which are produced out of the adrenal glands, and your sex hormones, progesterone, estrogen, and testosterone. So one test, neurotransmitters, cortisol, and sex hormones, which is great. We get that information back where we see deficiencies. We have, not even a bottle of vitamin C goes out of our office without text sheets, so you can Google what happened when people took clinical trials on this. And so that's one of the tests that we do. And say, let's just take adrenals for an example. What would we do? Here, some of the greatest herbs that are responsible for the adrenals and support is like rhodiola. These are called adaptogens, licorice root. And I want to mention an herb called L-theanine. Phenomenal. They've done studies on people with anxiety and kids, ADHD, kids and adults. L-theanine, they're even making beverages out of it called Moment, like let's take a moment. And so that, for example, just to give you a flavoring, I don't want to throw darts at it, especially if you've been contending for years with some of these things. The best is to, get tested and get to the root cause, but to just give you a flavoring of some of these things. On the gut, that GI map that I mentioned, that's, here again, just a fecal test. You send this in, takes about 3 weeks to get the results back, and they'll tell us which nutraceuticals and pharmaceuticals will work. GI map, they're international. They're phenomenal. The reason I bring that up is because certain, like glutamine, the idea here is to really decrease the inflammation. And maybe you've been hearing about these shots that lately for weight loss that are under different names, but they are, they're calming the brain and balancing out the sugar and the glucose. But berberine has been phenomenal. There's study after study after study that, which is a natural herb that calms the gut down, and it helps the brain. Same with L-theanine. The finesse of L-theanine is you can take it during the day. It doesn't make you sleepy, but it calms the brain down. So just some food for thought there.
Spell that, L-theanine, as you say it?
L-theanine. So, sure. Really important, sometimes 3 times a day we have to eat, and I feel like daily we need to exercise. So E stands for exercise and eat. And let's start with exercise. The most phenomenal, pristine, elite way to exercise, I feel, is through Pilates. And there's Pilates, you don't even need a reformer. And then there's Pilates with a reformer. And then there's this elite megaformer. And then there's these, this is the best of the best. And you have the best right here. Estella is certified in this Lagree method. And apparently Sebastian Lagree designed these where you get not only cardio, but muscle groups and the neurological components that kick in the synapsing. I know Estella knows more about this than I do, but I do believe in Pilates. I take Pilates classes, and to add the infrared lights. Infrared, they use infrared to incubate new preemies, babies. And it decreases it flows the lymph. And if you have heavy metals, it will help eliminate heavy metals, maybe from old fillings when you were a kid, or water from wells. We don't know how we get these heavy metals sometimes, but boy, infrared and lymph drainage, which is so important as women to have that lymph drainage going all the time. So to have the infrared lights with the Pilates, and especially on a megaformer, that's a 1-2 punch, and it's thrilling, to be able to to have the opportunity to go to especially such an elite studio as this. You know, I've been to several, and this is the best, you know. But anyway, so I mean, there's, of course, whatever resonates with you, do that, you know, because that's what'll get you out. And if walking is good, or jogging, or going to the gym, or just walking the dog, just start, you know, baby steps. You know, there was a big study done. I don't know why it was done on all women, but it was over 1,000 women over 3 years. And they ran blood work on them, and they gave them $100, and there was no judgment. And they said, you can spend this $100 any way you want, or you can donate it to a nonprofit of your choice. And no judgment, and so they would run the blood work, see the deficiencies, the participants would make their decision, and then they reran the blood work. And nothing bad happened with those that kept the $100. Everything stayed the same. But the women that donated to their cause, the inflammation went down, the white blood count came up, things were restored, like quickly. They ran the blood work right after the woman made the decision, within, they said, about a half hour. So this positive thinking is real, or a positive mindset, even in the middle of chaos, if you can think about what you're thinking about, and you know, you've seen the list, but they're important. You know, get around people that you love and that love you, and stay moving, and practice your faith, and exercise, eat right as much as you can. By eating right, you know, if you have Hashimotos, eating right really means being gluten-free. We've got to be gluten-free. You can Google it. It's called gluten and molecular mimicry. And it's where the doggone gluten's sitting on your receptor site, mimicking your sex hormones, your thyroid hormones, your cortisol hormones. So no wonder you're walking out of the doctor's office feeling crummy, and they're saying, well, everything's normal, and this should work, or that should work, the patch should work, this should be okay. But if we're eating gluten, that's thwarting all those efforts, month after month after month. So, you know, we want to be positive. And then the last one is set an intention. Set a number of intentions. Some that you may be thinking about, you know, we're going into fall, it's a new season, and set intentions to reach out to Estella, see how this all could, you know, make you feel better. Give me a call. I'd love to chat with you. We have what we call a clarity call, and you just go on our website and it says book a clarity call. The system will ask you to fill out a health history form. It'll redirect you to my calendar. Book yourself in around your convenience and my availability, and we'll talk about you and your needs and where you want to go. And from there we can, you know, just see if there's a fit. There's no obligation, and lots of intentions sometimes we do unknowingly, but it's great to do it knowingly and say, boy, you know, I want to start this and I don't even know where to begin. So it's great to pull things together under one roof. I'd like to leave you with a quote from the late, great Tina Turner. She just passed recently, you know. But she came out with a book that's called Happiness Looks Good on You. She has a quote that says, I believe we were all born with a unique mission, a purpose in life that only you can fulfill. And we are linked by a shared responsibility to help our human family grow kinder and happier. And that's Tina Turner. So that's so true. I mean, we're all in this together. We're doing the best we can. So thank you so much. I sure enjoyed being with you. You have a great day.